Good day everyone, we are here to present to you our work regarding Donatello and Michelangelo, the pioneers of art, and they are both considered as one of the greatest Italian Renaissance artists, especially in their sculpture. Here you will find out the life, background, history, and works of this great artist. You will learn new things here and this will greatly pique your interest, especially if you're an artist or maybe if you like history, and even if you don't, we will make sure that you will get valuable learning from this presentation. So, let's start.
Siya ay si Donato de Niccolò de Bardi o mas kilala sa Donatello. Siya ay ipinanganak noong 1386 sa Florence, Italy at namatay noong December 13, 1466 sa Florence. Son of Niccolò de Bardi, a Florentine wool carder. Ang ama ni Donatello ay si Niccolò de Bardi. Ang pamilyang Bardi ay matagumpay sa komersyo o pangangalakal. Donatello's early Renaissance David was remarkable for the time because it was the first unsupported bronze cast of the Renaissance and the first freestanding male nude that had been made since antiquity. Donatello, master of sculpture in both marble and bronze. Dahil siya ay tinaguri ang master of sculpture in both marble and bronze at hindi lang marble and bronze ang kaya niyang mukitin, he can also carve in stone, wood, terracotta, and stucco as well as unusual mixed media. Between 1402 and 1407, he became a member of the workshop of Lorenzo Ghiberti, a sculptor and bronze who in 1402 had won the competition for the doors of the baptistery. The Saucon, also known as La Saucon, is a marble statue sculpted by the Italian artist Donatello and was made between 1423 and 1425. The Saucon is renowned for its expressive and realistic portrayal of a bad prophet or philosopher. Saint George was made between c. 1416 to 1417, and it was made of marble with a height of 209 cm. Saint George is sculptured as young, brave, determined, and strong man in armor. Donatello's crucifix is considered a youthful work dated 1408 to 1409. The sculpture represents the dramatic moment when Abraham was prepared to obey God's command to kill his own son in sacrifice.
One of his famous work is The Penitent of Magdalene, na nilikha noong 1453 to 1455. This sculpture ay gawa sa wood of the white poplar tree and painted gold. It was commissioned by the Baptistery of Florence. This piece was received with astonishment because of its unprecedented realism. In this work, may kita natin si Mary Magdalene ay isang mapayat at haggard na matandang babae na kung saan tinatakpan ng kanyang mahabang buhok ang kanyang katawan. However, other artists shows her as a young and beautiful woman. According to the Gospel of St. Luke, si Mary ay isang faithful na disciple ni Jesus and also a sinner, kung saan siya ay naging isang prostitute, 30 years siyang nag-repent. Moreover, si Mary Magdalene ay naging simbolo para sa lahat ng mga sinners na pinatawad, minahal, nagsisi at faithful. And lastly, the way Donatello depicts her reminds us the primacy of the spiritual over the physical, creating a visceral reaction in the viewers. Donatello created two statues of David during his career. Ang kauna-unahang nilikha niya ay isang marble statue rendition of the biblical hero and created in 1408. He carved it in his early 20s and was commissioned by the Opera del Duomo to stand high on a buttress of the Florence Cathedral. The second David was created around 1440 to 1460. It was hailed as one of the greatest sculptural works, but also it was a supreme expression of the Renaissance spirit. It is extremely realistic and a prime example of Renaissance naturalism. Ito rin ay tinanghal na kauna-unang freestanding and male nude statue since classical antiquity that the Renaissance was seen to be a rebirth after the Middle Ages. It was commissioned by the Medici family since yung character ni David represented good governance and indicated God's protection. Also, during that time, yung bronze was the most expensive sculptural material symbolizing wealth and power. I'm sure alam nating lahat ang kwento ni David sa Bible story, na kung saan nagwagi si David sa battle with Goliath gamit ang kanyang tirador. Dito, makikita natin yung aftermath of this event as David stands in a confident pose. Walang suot si David maliban sa boots at sombrero na may dahon ng laurel, which may allude to his victory or his role as a poet and musician.
Moving on, sa kasunod na Renaissance artist, kilala siya sa pangalang Michelangelo, pero ang kaniyang buong pangalan ay Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni. He was born in Caprice, in Florence, Italy, noong March 6, 1475, at namatay naman noong February 18, 1564. Ito ay bago pa man sumapit ang kanyang ika-89th birthday. And aside from being a famous sculptor, nakilala rin siya bilang isang pintor, arkitekto, at isang poet. At an early age of 13, sinimula ni Michelangelo ang kaniyang career bilang isang artist apprentice o isang baguhan under ng supervision ni Domenico Ghirlandaio, isang Italianong pintor. And after a year, napalipat siya under Lorenzo il Magnifico de Medici, ang ruler ng Florence. Michelangelo is also known for his attempted fraud dahil sa pag-ukit niya noon ng isang Greek-style Cupid statue na tila pinagmukhang isang antique, kung saan kasama si Medici, nagkasundo sila sa fraudulent sale ng statue. And after this, nabenta ito kay Cardinal Rafael Riario sa mas mataas na presyo. Isa pa, itinuturing din siyang isa sa greatest living artist dahil sa kanyang mga obra at galing sa larangan ng sining. And at the age of 74, kagaya ng nabanggit kanina, isa siyang architect. Pinalitan niya si Antonio da Sangallo bilang isang arkitekto ng St. Peter's Basilica. And aside from that, he also created artworks for 9 Catholic popes mula kay Julius II hanggang kay Pius IV, starting in 1505. His artworks ranges from ornamental na crafting para sa higaan ng Pope hanggang sa 4-year-long process ng pagpipinta ng Sistine Chapel. At hindi siya tumigil sa paglikha ng mga obra until he passed away year 1564. At isa sa most famous fresco painting niya sa Sistine Chapel ay ang Creation of Adam noong 1508 to 1512, which represents God as He gives life to Adam in the book of Genesis. Now, let's move on to some of his works. One of his many masterpieces is Madonna of Bruges, na nilikha noong 1501 to 1504, kung saan makikita ang isang banal na berhen na nakangiti sa isang sanggol na hawak ang kanyang braso. It is a representation of Mary with the infant Jesus. Next is Bacchus, created in 1497. Ito ang kanyang unang large-scale sculpture of Christian theme, na nagre-represent kay Bacchus bilang isang Roman god of wine na makikitang medyo may pagkalaseng. And last is Moses, created between 1513 to 1515. Tungkol naman ito sa specific biblical moment ni Moses nang makababa siya ng Mount Sinai at makita ang mga taong nagsimulang sumamba sa isang rebultong pagano o ang Golden Calf.
Moving on to his most famous works, first we have Michelangelo's La Pieta. Isa sa pinakang sikat na work ni Michelangelo ang La Pieta. It was a popular subject among Northern European artists. Ang La Pieta ay from an Italian pronunciation na ang meaning ay pity or compassion, and nagre-represent about sa mother sorrowful contemplating the dead body of her son, which she holds on her lap. This sculpture was commissioned by a French cardinal living in Rome. Kagaya nga ng sinabi ko kanina, na ang scene of La Pieta shows the Virgin Mary holding the dead body of Christ after his crucifixion, death, and removal from the cross. Pero bago siya naman dito ilagay sa tomb. And this is one of the key events from the life ni Mary na kilala as the Seven Sorrows of Mary, which were the subject of Catholic devotional prayers. And I'm sure that the subject matter was kilala na by many people, but in the late 15th century, it was depicted in the artwork more commonly in France and Germany than in Italy. Sinabi ni Michelangelo na ang the block of Carrara marble na ginamit niya to make it was the most perfect block he ever used, and he would go on to polish and refine this work more than any other statue he created. Ito ay isang special work of art, lalo na noong Renaissance, because noong time na yun, kakaiba talaga ang multi-figured sculptures. 51 years ago today, Hungarian man na tinatawag nila bilang Laszlo Toth ang umakyat sa isang altar rail sa St. Peter's Basilica and inatake nito ang lapyeta ni Michelangelo gamit ang isang hammer, habang sumisigaw siya ng "I am Jesus Christ, risen from the dead." And after naman noong 1972 violent attack ng lapyeta, the work was restored naman and returned to its place in St. Peter's and inilagay ito sa isang bulletproof acrylic glass panel to protect it and to prevent na rin for future attacks. Now, let's proceed to Michelangelo's another famous artwork, which is David. The sculptor na si Michelangelo spent 3 years creating David between 1501 up to 1504, and he was just 26 noong ginawa niyang rebulto ni David. But he was already the most famous and best paid artist in his days. Ang statue of David ni Michelangelo ay 5.17-meter marble statue of a standing male nude. The statue represents the biblical hero David. It was commissioned by the Rules of Florence na sinisimbolo sa the city's commercial and military strength. This statue is made of one single block of marble from the quarries in Carrara in Tuscany and kino-consider ito na one of the whitest in the world.
Now we're going to discuss the Three David by Donatello, Verrocchio, and Michelangelo. All of these artworks are masterpieces that has their own unique traits and similarities between them. But before we proceed, let's first talk about the origin and inspiration to the creation of these artworks, which is the biblical story of the young David slaying the Philistine giant Goliath with a stone from his sling. Now since we're done with that, let's talk about the background of the artworks. As you can see, the first David was made by Donatello in the 1440 in the early Renaissance period. This artwork has a religious context and it is placed on Florence Cathedral. It is made in bronze and it stands at 5 or 6 feet tall. Now let's talk about the David of Verrocchio. As you can see, it is made in 1473 to 1475. So this artwork was created not so long ago after the creation of David by Donatello. It is also bronze and it is smaller in size compared to the first David since it only stands at 4 feet tall. This artwork was commissioned by the Medici family and popular legend states that the model for the statue was a young artist from Verrocchio's studio, Leonardo da Vinci. Now let's proceed with the David by Michelangelo. He was only 26 years old when he was given the commission, and he worked on the statue for over 2 years from 1501 to 1504. Unlike the other two, it is made from the finest marble from a quarry in Carrara and is huge in size compared to the other two since it stands at 16 feet and 11.5 inches tall. It is a masterpiece created at the High Renaissance period, which set the standards for the artwork during the time. It has been decided that the statue should be placed at the entrance to the Palazzo Vecchio in the Piazza della Signoria in Florence. The original sculpture is now in the Accademia Gallery in Florence, while the David in the Plaza della Signoria is a replica. Now let's talk about the features of the three Davids. Donatello's David shows nakedness and implied homosexuality, with David wearing nothing more than boots and a hat made this work very controversial at the time. It shows David confidently with his foot above the head of Goliath after the battle. Verrocchio David shows Goliath head below David along his feet after the battle and has been subject of debate during the time. Some historians says that the head should be placed between David's feet, while others claim that it belongs to the right. Just like the first David, the artwork shows feminine features. Michelangelo's David, unlike the other two, does not include the head of Goliath, but depicts the moments before the battle with the slingshot placed over the left shoulder. His David has more masculine features compared to the other two, and it has an unusually large head and imposing right hand. And that's all for the comparison between the three Davids. All of these artists and artworks has their own uniqueness and influence to the artworks during their time. They are the one who built the foundation and set the standards for the artwork that we are seeing today. That's all for the discussion about Donatello and Michelangelo. We hope you learn new things from us. Thank you for listening.